This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, season 6, episode 8. I'm Reverend Emmett Price.
And I'm Reverend Irene Monroe.
Irene, before we jump into today's conversation about our reflections on the recent NAACP National Convention's historic return to Boston, let us thank each of our listeners and our viewers. This 6th season is all because of you. Thank you for listening to us on the various podcast apps and for watching the actual live recording of the podcast on our YouTube channel. We are grateful for your support, your encouragement, your feedback, your reviews, and your comments. Thank you so much for sharing the podcast with others.
And a tsunami, let me say it again, and a tsunami of thanks for our continued listenership. And a tsunami of thanks, of course, to our creative genius, the producers, Cavante Smalls and Kyla Wright.
In this particular moment, as we look at, of course, our history, but most importantly, the attack on these rights, how do you see it? And what do we need to be doing to protect those rights?
Register to vote and then vote. After 2020, some people got scared, but a whole lot of other people got empowered. Because of what you did, in 2020, Joe Biden got elected President of the United States, and I got elected the first Black woman to be Vice President of the United States.
From Wednesday, July 26, 2023, through the following week, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People came back to Boston for the 114th annual convention. This historic gathering featured a hybrid presentation, touting 7,000 in personal attendance and tens of thousands more online to witness critical conversations, interviews, performances, and of course, the passing of numerous motions. Irene, is the NAACP still a relevant organization? And what was the overall impact of its return to Boston, both for the organization and for Boston?
Well, I think for 2023, I can say this, and I was delighted to see after the last time I was there, it was an empowering experience. It is most definitely relevant in 2023. The theme for the convention was thriving together, and it was appropriate, particularly in a time of regressive laws. I had nothing but joy for the 5 days that I was there. I was able to see and experience a sense of collective Black joy, love, respect, and continued struggle. It really wasn't an immersive experience, Emmett. You know, people were able to experience things like the arts, entertainment, sports, health, and wellness. In many ways, Boston reintroduced itself. Well, let's just say this: Black Boston was able to reintroduce itself to the national, NAACP convention. And I say that because the last time it was here, I wasn't here. I don't think you were here either in 1982.
No.
Well, you weren't even born. So
yes, I was. Come on,
okay.
Irene. Here you go. Here you go.
But the last time it's been 41 years since it was last here. And the last time it was here was 1982. And the reason why it hasn't come back, for a couple of reasons: the residual of the tensions from the busing, crisis that left a pox on the city. But also in 1982, the year that it did come, there was this incident where a Black family moved into a white section of Dorchester and their home was firebombed. So the reputation of it being racist is appropriate.
I mean, very appropriate, and not even just in 1982, but for years and decades after that.
That's right.
Just for the folks who actually listen to the podcast, who are excited when I talk. Irene just made an ageist comment, by the way, since I'm always being accused of being ageist. And I was on the planet in 1982, by the way, just for clarification. But what's interesting about Boston and the history of Boston, and particularly Black Boston, you absolutely hit this right on the head. Black Boston showed up and showed out, reintroduced itself as a visible, powerful,
Viable. Yeah,
viable, entity within this historic city, with economic opportunities, with social and political capital, and with a voice.
that's right. That's
And
right.
so I think it was very important. And you and I have come from different parts of the nation, and we're from different generations. But I tend to agree with you that there still is a place for the NAACP in
Right.
2023, and that
Mhm.
in many ways the new leadership that we have, both from the executive directors and the national presidents and the boards of directors and whatnot, have figured out how to bring multiple generations together. So I love
Right.
this theme of thriving together.
Absolutely. The thing, so one of the things, it comes at an important time, not only in our political history, but also in this Black Boston Renaissance. We've had a Harlem Renaissance. We now have a Boston Renaissance with a critical mass of Black professionals, entrepreneurs, and we were in a place where it was held was at the convention center. And people who don't know this, it was held in the heart of South Boston.
Yeah.
South Boston was an area which not only did the busing crisis bring it to the fore, but also even after the busing crisis, you knew that if you were a person of color, not well, you knew at nighttime.
Daytime too.
But daytime too. But I want to just say that one of the primary purpose was to get NAACP members and their branches from all across the country to come together and to vote on the organization's policy positions and new board members. Not to mention, just also to network. Boston showed out. Tanisha Sullivan is the Boston chapter president. Michael Curry came out. Ayanna Presley. I love what Michelle Wu said to the audience. She said, "Were it not for
Mhm,
the NAACP, her folks would not be here." And
mhm,
she's a Taiwanese, she's a daughter of Taiwanese immigrants, and she talked about where they had this restriction of people of Asian descent coming into the city. I mean,
mhm.
coming into the country. And one of the things that I want to say, the NAACP means the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And so it's not just for Black rights, but it also works for people who are people of color. And that's the beautiful thing about the NAACP here. I think one of the things, though, that when you ask, was it relevant? This is what I want to say, because it's had a lot of sort of internal dissension. And it really hurt my heart when Reverend, Barber, left the organization because of
Mhm.
the internal but I can best describe that it's reform and continues to be reforming. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think what it realized, that in order for it to be brought up today, is to bring in the NAACP Youth and College Division. And I just
Yes.
want to say a little bit about that. They had a program which was just wonderful. It was called AXO, and it's short for Afro Academic, Cultural, Technological, and Scientific Olympics. Oh my God, Emmett, it was wonderful. It featured young artists, scientists, from the 200 NAACP chapters across the country. The competition was fierce. I enjoyed, I enjoyed the cooking. I enjoyed the science was above my understanding. The robots. I mean, it was just amazing what the youth is doing, and what it understands is this: that in order for it to have any, life moving forward, it has to reach out to its youth division. And I think a lot of people don't understand that before it had its internal problems, it had always geared itself around youth. Because I belong to the NAACP I come out of the Brooklyn chapter. I joined it when I was 14 years old.
Mhm.
Shirley Chisholm was my congresswoman. So I had always understood it to be a recruitment for young folks like myself at that time, to help us understand what the issues are, to keep us engaged, and also that whatever profession that we ever pursued, to always understand the importance of racial justice.
Well, you mentioned the young adults and the youth part of the NAACP. I want to mention another part of the NAACP, and that's Black women, Black
Oh,
women
yes.
leadership. And what a privilege. Our opening clip was the Massachusetts Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, a strong Black woman, in conversation with United States Vice President Kamala Harris, another strong Black woman, at the historic 114th NAACP National Convention here in Boston, as streamed by Roland Martin and the Black Star
Mhm.
Network on that Sunday, July 30th, 2023. And you mentioned we had Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley,
Presley.
another
Hmm.
strong Black woman, Boston branch president Tanisha Sullivan, another strong
Okay.
Black woman, and to have these strong Black women
And wait, one
presented
other
and
thing, one
represented
other.
there.
The Spring Guard Award. That was
That's
the
right.
last night.
That's right.
Hillary Clinton was the closer, presenting the Spring Guard Award to Mama Dukes. Dr. Hazel Duke, from where? New York
Now,
City.
see,
And you
look,
couldn't, and she's
look.
91 years old, been on the battlefield for a long time. And you cannot come out of New York City and not know Mama Dukes.
Irene, I'm a Black Baptist preacher, and I'm calling the role of strong, powerful Black women, and
And
you're gonna
I
throw Hillary Clinton in there. Come on, Irene.
but she
Come on.
presented an important award, the Spring Guard. That was the closing.
Yeah, now
The
fair
Spring
enough.
Guard.
Mom,
Yeah,
mom,
yeah,
mom Dukes is an absolute
yeah,
legend who we
yeah.
know across. We got to
Across,
take
yeah.
a break, but before we take a break, let me tease you with this factoid, since you don't think I was alive in 1982.
No, I don't.
During the 1980s, I competed in the AXO competition as a high
Ooh.
school student, representing the Los Angeles chapter of the NAACP for a number of years. And in the late 90s, I was a
Uh-huh.
national adjudicator for the same AXO competition. So I
I'm so
love
proud of
AXO.
you.
Love AXO.
And
This is
look
the All
and
Rev'd Up
and look
podcast.
and look what you turned out to be. I don't know if it's good or bad, but look.
Oh, we definitely need a break here. We are taking a break. This is the All Rev'd Up podcast. We'll be right back.
1901, William Monroe Charter. I want you to quantum leap for a second. How many people watch that TV show? I want you to quantum leap for a second to 1915. You're walking down Tremont Street in Boston and you see 10,000 black folks marching down the street, protesting the opening of Birth of a Nation. Largest protest in this country was led by the Boston NAACP and William Monroe Charter.
This is the All Rev'd Up podcast. We are back from a break, and you just heard the voice of the former Boston branch president and current national board member, Michael A. Curry, Esquire, during the opening public mass meeting as live streamed on the NAACP YouTube channel on Sunday, July 30th, 2023. Irene, you and I both admire and just love
Love,
Michael Curry and his leadership
respect.
and all that he has done,
Absolutely.
both on the local level and on the national level, and working behind the scenes to bring this convention to Boston.
Absolutely. And also bring in folks who have been on the margin of the
Yes.
NAACP. And so
Yes.
my story is I left the NAACP for decades because
Mhm.
of its homophobia. But Michael Curry is our guy. He came in 2017, a pivotal year for the NAACP. And why I say pivotal year, Melissa Harris Perry, who a well-known scholar, wrote a column in the New York Times asking, is the NAACP relevant? The bishops of the AMC Church wrote an open letter asking for reform. As I said earlier, in 2017, Reverend William Barber left. And so Michael really comes to the rescue in so many ways in terms of welcoming people who have been on the march. In 2017, Michael Curry showed up to the LGBT annual Bayard Rustin breakfast. And for folks who don't know who Bayard Rustin is, he was the gay architect on the March on Washington. But he came in 2017, and the next day he came on that Saturday, and that Monday I put my membership back in action here. And then 2018, because of Michael Curry, the NAACP held its convention in San Antonio, Texas, and invited LGBT activists from across the nation, Emmett, to apologize for its homophobia. The president got up and said, I'm sorry. Said, we have wasted too much time, too much talent. We were too ensconced in the Black church theology to listen to our children, and we're sorry we lost so many to the AIDS epidemic. Well, and ever since that moment, Emmett, the NAACP has been relevant.
Yeah, I mean, and I just want to do a respectful fact check, because I think you said AMC, which are movie theaters. I think you meant the AME.
Yeah, that's because you know what? You know why? Because I've been going to Barbenheimer. I saw Barbie and Oppenheimer, so I've been at the AMC. That's where I've been.
But to your point, Michael Curry is a legendary leader here in Boston for his courage and for his ability to speak truth to power in ways and shapes that invites people to the table and does it in a very meaningful, respectful, and just brilliant way. I left the NAACP as well. Clearly, as a high schooler and as a young person, even in my college days at the University of California, Berkeley, I was a member of the local chapter right there in the Bay Area. And then I witnessed or experienced the NAACP's intergenerational warfare as one who was a part of the hip hop generation. And I just felt like there was no place and no voice for us who are in our 20s and early 30s, particularly as the NAACP was doing funeral services to bury the N-word. I was a huge fan of Tupac Amaru Shakur, who had an acronym that he used, Never Ignorant, Getting Goals Accomplished, as a reframe. And I know you and I disagree on that, and we've had a podcast episode on that, so we don't want to go back and rehash that. But the point was that as a young person, I felt that my voice didn't have a place at the table. But however, being here in Boston and watching under the leadership of Michael Curry, some of the engagement and some of the activities and the events in the ways and shapes that there were invitations, not only just for generational experiences, but for diasporic and multicultural experiences of Blackness. So here in Boston, we have African American or Black folks, but we also have Caribbean.
Thank you. And African
That's folks from various nations. And the way that the Boston branch really embraces, engages the various communities, not as a monolithic or a homogenous experience, but to allow the multitude of shades and expressions of Blackness here in Boston to have a place, to have a seat at the table, also to express ourselves in various ways. So, it's been an up and a down, roller coaster here, but I'm really grateful and really excited about what I witnessed at this 114th historic convention.
Yeah, it really was a pivotal moment, and really it could only move forward.
Now, you mentioned Hillary Clinton. I mean, come on, Irene.
But the point is that she was the highlight. Seriously, she was. Listen, she gave Mama Dukes award. They listen. I didn't do the planning; they did and stuff. So I had nothing to do with that. Absolutely here and stuff. But nonetheless, I was glad to see at 91 they did not forget Mama
Yeah.
Dukes. That's
Yeah.
what I greatly appreciate.
And she is such a legend, not
Oh
just,
gosh,
there in New York and the local New York chapter there,
it's
but the
national.
work that
Yeah,
she has done in terms of mentoring and really engaging the heart and minds of so many in that organization. And before we dismount from this episode, Irene, you and I earlier had the opportunity to talk on NPR about one of our mentors and one of our dear friends, the professor,
that's
Charles
right.
Ogletree, who
That's right.
we
Homage.
knew as Tree. And I was so excited to see, earlier a press release from the NAACP honoring Tree
That's right.
for his legacy, for his leadership, and for what he has done. So maybe,
And his legacy lives on because, as we
yeah.
say, he's one of the tallest trees in our forest.
Absolutely. I just wanted to take a moment to honor
Yeah.
him as we think about the work
Yeah.
of those who have committed their life to ending racial discrimination in the various ways that
That's
he
right.
did and the NAACP did as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, by way of a final word or benediction, I want to reflect on something. Michael Curry talked about 1901 and the lynchings here in Boston. And then he went to talk on about 1915 and the then largest, movement, activation, or protest by Black folks around the launch of the film Birth of a Nation.
Yes.
Well, most people don't know that in 1911, the second ever annual NAACP convention was held in Boston.
That's right.
And most people don't know that in 1912, on February 8th to be exact, that there were 60 Black and white Bostonians gathered at the historic Park Street Church to receive the official branch charter, making Boston the first chartered branch of, and I quote, the oldest and largest all-volunteer civil rights organization in the nation, dedicated to the elimination of racial discrimination, end quote. Names like Ida B. Wells, talk about a strong Black woman, and W.E.B. Du Bois, talk about a phenomenal leader, served as legendary Black leaders in the beginning. And here we are, 114 years later, the convention returned to Boston. Racial discrimination remains at a high, and Boston has been touted as one of the most racist cities in the nation. And regardless of where we see ourselves in this nation, or perhaps how we see ourselves, this is a season that we need to keep our eyes open, keep our ears open, and prayerfully keep our mouths open. Protections are being rolled back, opportunities are being rolled back, access is being rolled back, and of course, body autonomy, voting rights, and now affirmative action are all being rolled back. So, if the NAACP is going to keep up the fight, then I am all in. And I hope you, our dear listeners, are in too.
All right.
Amen.
Amen.
Ashe.
Ashe.
All Rev'd Up is brought to you by us, the Revs. Our amazing producers are Kyla Wright and Cavante Smalls.
Music for this episode is from Reverend Price's son and musical prodigy, Emmett G. Price IV. All Rev'd Up is distributed by GBH.
Additional thanks to Bob Kempf, Elizabeth O'Brien, May He, Devin Robbins, Meredith Neerman, and Zach Waldman.
If you like what you hear, let us know. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts and follow us at All Rev'd Up Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Feel free to send us a note, a question, or a comment to allrevduppod@gmail.com. We'll be back